Maddox Derkosh. On November 4, 2012, a 2-year-old called Maddox Derkosh was standing on a viewing deck to see the African painted dog enclosure at the Pittsburgh Zoo. The deck had a railing and many warning signs telling visitors not to lift children onto it. But Maddox's mother wanted him to see better, so she lifted him over the railing. In just seconds, he slipped and fell 14 feet down into the enclosure. There was a net below the platform, but it was only made to catch small things, like sunglasses or phones. Maddox fell onto the net, bounced off, and then dropped straight into the enclosure. The pack of 11 painted dogs ran at him right away. Witnesses said his mother screamed and tried to jump in after him, but other visitors held her back. Everyone saw the attack happen in front of them. The dogs attacked while he was conscious, biting and tearing at his body. He suffered more than 46 wounds too. His head and neck and his inner organs were destroyed. He bled to death inside the enclosure before zoo staff could get close enough to reach him. A police officer fired his gun and killed one dog, hoping it would stop the attack, but the other dogs kept going. The tragedy quickly started a big argument. The zoo said the mother had ignored the warnings and acted carelessly, while the mother and her family said the zoo was unsafe, that the railing left children in danger, and that the whole design of the platform was flawed. Both sides took legal action against each other, but in the end, no charges were brought against the mom. The family later made a private settlement with the zoo, and soon after the attack, the viewing platform was removed. As for the painted dogs, only the one killed during the rescue attempt died that day. The other dogs were later sent to different zoos. The painted dog exhibit was closed forever, and the space was later turned into a cheetah exhibit. Don Bronco was an experienced trainer with 15 years of work behind her and was especially known for her bond with the orcas. Her closest connection was with Tychum SeaWorld, Orlando's largest whale, who weighed more than 12,000 pounds. That day she was performing in the Dine with Shamu show, where guests sat by the pool eating while watching trainers and whales interact. At the end of the show, Don lay on a shallow ledge right next to Tilikum, rubbing his head as part of the routine. Then, out of nowhere, it grabbed her and pulled her into the water. The grip was fast and incredibly strong. The audience then saw the giant whale drag her under and thrash her around the pool, and SeaWorld staff rushed to help. They threw nets and food into the water to distract Tychum and tried guiding it through different pools until it was finally moved into a smaller medical pool where he could be contained. But for a whole 45 minutes, he would not let Dawn go. Trainers and guests could only watch helplessly as she drowned. When her body was finally recovered, the autopsy showed just how violent the attack had been. Drowning was the official cause of death, but her injuries were horrific. Her spinal cord was severed, her jaw, ribs, and bones in her neck were broken. Her scalp had been completely torn off, her left arm ripped away, and her left knee dislocated. The report showed she had not only drowned, she had also suffered massive trauma from the sheer power of the orcas' movements. Her death led to trainers being banned from swimming with the whales during shows. Patricia Wyman's death came only a few days after she started what she thought was her dream job. In April 1996, the 24-year-old wildlife biologist had just been hired to care for the wolves at Halliburton Forest and Wildlife Reserve. The reserve was known for keeping its wolves as wild as possible, which is why visitors could only see the pack through one-way glass and staff were warned that people should never try to make contact with the animals. Only a few days later, Patricia entered the wolves' 15-acre enclosure alone. Normally, the wolves were shy and stayed away from humans, but that day, something was different. When she stepped inside, the wolves stood up and began moving toward her. Witnesses later reported that they circled her slowly, surrounding her inside their territory. Patricia must have realized she was in danger, but before she could escape, she tripped over a fallen tree. That mistake sealed her fate because the alpha male rushed at her first, knocking her to the ground, and the rest of the pack followed. They bit into her arms and legs, tearing through skin and muscle, and pulled her in different directions. She tried to fight back, but the pack was too strong. Each wolf weighed as much as 176 pounds. Patricia lost blood quickly and grew weaker as the wolves mauled her. She tried to protect her head and neck, but it wasn't enough. Within minutes, she died inside the enclosure only 4 days into her new job. When police arrived, the wolves were still guarding her, even though they hadn't yet eaten her. When officers tried to approach, the wolves circled them too, growling and moving closer, until gunshots were fired into the air to scare them away. Experts later said that the wolves' behavior had shifted suddenly and unpredictably, especially in the alpha male. No one knows why. Patricia entered the enclosure that day when it wasn't feeding time, but once she was inside, she had no way to Rosa King escape. Rosa King. On what seemed a normal morning, Rosa King, a 33-year-old zookeeper at Hamilton Zoo Park, was cleaning the windows inside the tiger paddock before the zoo opened to visitors, which was just a routine part of her work. The enclosure housed Sissip, a fully grown male Malayan tiger. Safety rules required that a heavy vertical slide and 2 gates be closed to keep the tiger locked away whenever a keeper went inside. But that morning, when Rosa stepped in, all 3 barriers had been left open. This meant Sissip had full access to the paddock. Tragedy struck. Sissip mauled her with extreme force. Its jaws clamped down on her neck with enough force to break through the bones of her spine, and her spinal cord was completely severed in the neck area, a devastating injury that left her instantly paralyzed and unable to fight back. The bite crushed soft tissue and broke bone, while the tiger's teeth sank deep into her throat. Her arms were ripped open with deep gouges, and her right leg was badly torn by both bites and swipes. Across her body there were many cuts and scratches, signs of repeated mauling. These wounds would have caused her to lose a huge amount of blood within only moments. A visitor looking through the viewing area was the first to notice Rosa's body lying motionless on the ground and raised the alarm. The investigation confirmed that there had been no mechanical failure with the gates or slides. Rosa had entered without realizing the barriers were open, leaving her exposed to the tiger. The zoo's safety system depended entirely on keepers following the procedure correctly every time. Alexis Martinez. On December 24, 2009, trainer Alexis Martinez was working with Keo, a huge orca that weighed more than 6,600 pounds, when the animal suddenly turned on him. At first, the session seemed normal, even though reports said Keo wasn't responding well to the signals it had been trained to follow. Then, as Alexis swam toward the shallow platform, Keo suddenly leaned toward him, pushed him under the water with his rostrum, the front of the whale's head, and rammed him hard in the chest. Trainers standing at the side, tried everything to get Keo to stop. They slapped the water, gave hand signals, and even shook a food bucket, but the orca ignored all commands. It came up briefly for air, then went straight back to Alexis. Witnesses said it lifted Alexis out of the water on his rostrum and held him with his mouth shut. When Ko finally let him go, Alexis's body sank to the bottom of the pool, motionless. Rescuers tried to move Keo into another tank so they could reach Alexis, but the orca resisted. It played with the gates and refused to cooperate, delaying the rescue. Staff could only recover Alexis after they used a net to redirect the whale. The autopsy revealed how violent the attack had been. Alexis died from massive internal bleeding caused by the crushing force. His chest was broken, with many compression fractures, and his organs were torn apart.
John
Jian Rankarasamy. On the morning of September 10th, 2025, 58-year-old zookeeper John Rankarasamy, a veteran who had worked with lions and tigers for almost 20 years, stepped out of his vehicle inside the lion enclosure during feeding time, while tourists remained inside. Allegedly, according to the safety rules, no one is ever allowed to leave the vehicle in predator areas, but that
morning John did.
He left the vehicle door open and stood beside it while the lions were being fed. One lion crept up behind him and suddenly pounced, knocking him to the ground. Within seconds, the rest of the pride joined in. Tourists sitting inside their cars watched in horror as the lions mauled John, biting and clawing him while he lay helpless on the ground. Some honked their horns frantically to try to scare the animals away, but the lions ignored the noise. The attack lasted for nearly 15 minutes before help arrived. When they finally reached the scene and pulled John's body out, the injuries were catastrophic. His chest had been ripped open, his neck and one leg were broken, and his body was covered with deep bite and claw wounds. He was rushed to Introit Hospital, but doctors could only declare him dead. Police and wildlife authorities launched a full investigation to find out why John left the vehicle. Some believe it may have been a mistake or distraction, while his family insists he never broke safety rules without a reason. His wife said he always followed the guidelines and cared for the animals like family. His brother explained that John was only a few months away from retirement. Norden bin Nordine Montang. On the afternoon of November 13th, 2008, 32-year-old Norden bin Montang, a Malaysian cleaner at Singapore Zoo, climbed over the barrier and jumped into the white tiger enclosure. People watching said he was carrying a broom and a yellow bucket, shouting as he walked. At first, visitors thought it was part of a show and saw 3 white tigers coming toward him slowly. One moved closer, then suddenly hit him, knocking him to his knees. Norden tried to protect himself, even lifting the bucket over his head like a shield, but it was no use.
A
second tiger joined in, and both began biting at him. Onlookers screamed for him to get back into the nearby water, but his sudden movements only made the tigers attack harder. One tiger bit into his neck and pushed him to the ground. Another grabbed his body and dragged him further inside the paddock. People threw things and shouted, but the attack went on for nearly 2 minutes. The tigers bit him again and again on the head, chest,
and body.
Doctors counted more than 90
wounds.
His ribs and skull were broken, and the bites to his neck were so bad that he had no chance of surviving. Keepers ran to the scene and used long poles, banging them on the ground to scare the tigers away. After several tries, they managed to distract the animals long enough to pull Norden's Body out. Veterinarians tried first aid while waiting for paramedics, but it was too late. He was pronounced dead shortly afterward. Investigators later said that Norden had entered the enclosure on purpose, and his death was treated as a suicide. If you want to discuss this video or suggest an idea for the next one,